We are live.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Alexi Anastasio, and this is.
My name is James Hancock, and thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, we're going to be talking about the infamous and actually famous Bill Plympton, Oscar-nominated animator. We both worked with this awesome individual, creative individual, and I directed a documentary about his life and about the creative life that he lives for the past ever. We don't want to age him, right?
Well,
He'll be our.
It's common knowledge that he's been an illustrator since the 1970s, so he's no spring chicken, but he is more lively and youthful than most people my age. So, the book isn't closed on his career quite yet.
Right. So James, can you do a little? I want you to do a little intro, telling people how you've worked with Bill Plympton. We're going to talk about your past, present.
I met Bill at New York Comic-Con in 2010, and I actually attended a panel where you were on the Q&A with him, and you were dressed up as the cow from The Cow Who Wanted to Be a Hamburger. And you guys showed a rough pencil test, about 20 minutes long, from a film called Cheatin'. And then I introduced myself to him at his booth afterwards, and then I kind of didn't think about him for another year until I saw a Kickstarter campaign for a movie called The Flying House. And they were raising money to restore an old silent film, and I made a contribution to that. And I basically cold called him and just said, look, I was really impressed with this campaign. If you have any projects or you're looking for help from a production standpoint or an investment standpoint, I would love to talk. And at that time, he was still raising money for Cheatin'. So initially, I came on board just as an investor. But then as I saw, like with any independent film, there are a lot of jobs that need to get done, and there's never enough money to do all those jobs. I started volunteering to help with things like social media, promoting the film at comic conventions, promoting the film at film festivals, and ultimately playing an active role in the distribution strategy, because we distributed the film Cheatin' ourselves, which meant hiring PR, meant hiring a booker, and so on and so forth. And we became friends, and now we are making more movies. Adam Rakoff, my fellow executive producer, he and I formed a small company called Rakoff Hancock Animated Productions for the sole purpose of producing between 1 and maybe 3 short films by Bill per year. And we just finished our first, The Loneliest Stoplight, which played at Telluride, and it had a brief theatrical run in LA at the New Art. And we will probably be releasing it online in about a month and a half. But it's got the voice of Patton Oswalt, and we couldn't be more proud of it.
Wow, that's just awesome. And it's interesting because, before, I guess I should say when I met Bill. Well, I talk about this in my documentary. I was volunteering for the Golden Trailer Awards, and
It's the end of my story.
Yeah, and he showed his tie, and it was like a lady, and I was like, but
he wore that tie to the Annie Awards this past year. We were out in LA for the Annie Awards, and he was showing it off to everybody. We were meeting like directors of The Simpsons and people at DreamWorks, and every single person, he flipped that tie around. So,
and I was like, I think it was 2000. So that means I was 19. No. That means I was 20, 2009, 21. I don't know. I think it was, anyway, I was born in 81. I can't do math. Anyway, so I think it was like 2000. But I also bumped into him so many freaking times after that. At Sundance, the Golden Trailer Awards had an actual golden stream, like a trailer, and they would, as a volunteer, to show trailers and shorts. And I showed the trailer of Mutant Aliens over and over again. And then people just loved it. they leave laughing. So I just keep on showing it. I'm like, oh, they're going to like this. And so so that was like the first time, like I got to know him a little bit more, but I just kept on bumping into him at every single New York City film party. So I'm just going to refresh my screen.
Yeah, I'm getting the audio loud and clear, but it's the video component has dropped out from poor connectivity. And there you are, coming back.
Am I okay? Did you hear part?
Yeah, I could hear every word. The video briefly dropped out due to poor signal, but I could hear the audio loud and clear.
Okay, great. So yes, so I kept on seeing him, and then I realized when I was clearing out my space of like all the business cards and like, you know, stuff. I'm like, I don't remember this person. I'm going to throw this out. I don't have no idea who this is. And, oh, there's another Bill Plympton postcard, and then another Bill Plympton postcard, and then another. I'm like, wait a minute, like a dozen, of these things. And I'm like, from bumping into him at Sundance at, you know, Diesel, the, you know, Cannes, whatever, like, it was like Bill was there. And so when it was time where I finally had the confidence to make my first feature film, and had just done a short about a Parisian artist before, and I'm like, oh, when I heard his story, when I actually watched his masterclass at the Cinema Arts Center in my hometown, and my friend was just like, oh yeah, you should really talk to this Bill Plympton. I'm like, I know Bill, you know, like, and then, but I got seeing his story, and then I jumped in and helped him with his DVDs, and I just, I'm because I had done a lot of conventions, I was good at that, and okay, so so I was good at, like, you know, taking apart DVDs and everything that stuff, and so Bill was just like, oh, well, thank you so much. He did so great that day. Like, he sold a whole bunch of artwork and a whole bunch of DVDs. And I'm like, oh, wow, people they're like eating this stuff up. And he's like, what can you know, like, what do you want? Do you want a DVD? Do you want, like, whatever? And I'm like, actually, I'd really love a drawing of me as a fairy. And he was working on Idiots and Angels. I think he was finishing that up. And, or it was just, and so he drew me as an angel, and he had done it in like 2 weeks. He colored it. It was small, but he colored it, and it was color pencil. I'm like, wow, you know. And we went out to dinner, and I told him, you know, I'd like to do a documentary on you, and he said, well, I'll put together a proposal. And so I did.
Was that something you about, or did it pop into your head then and there?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Was that the documentary an idea that you'd been thinking about for a long time at that point, or did it kind of pop into your head spontaneously when he was doing the picture?
The idea came to me when I was doing. It was a little bit like watching the masterclass, and then helping him. Like, all right, wait a minute, I'm gonna follow up, and I might as well go and meet him instead of having him send me the thing, because he's only in New York City and I was on Long Island. And I'm like, wait a minute, of like showing the creative life. He's a full-time artist, and so it was a perfect theme for my work. And I just thought, you know, documentaries, I'm like, I'm going to learn so much just doing it anyway. I'm like, and I had taken an animation class in college and my senior year because I was trying to save the world. And I thought it was more important to put up Bowling for Columbine posters than go to my animation class. I had to drop my animation class, but luckily I did, because it was 3D animation, and, you know, but so I'm like, oh, well, I'll just learn from Bill Plympton. I do not want to be an animator. I still love drawing, but at the moment, I do not want to be an animator.
Unless the prospect of drawing 44,000 drawings for a feature film is appealing, you should not be an animator. That's what it takes.
Exactly. Yeah, I love drawing, but even like I didn't focus on drawing even in college. Like I was going to, when I had one of those, how they have those career days, you say like, oh, if you might want to go here. Well, Cooper Union came to my school and they're like, if you don't draw on your sketchbook every day, then don't even apply. And I'm like, what?
I totally agree. I mean, Bill wakes up every day and draws for hours before he even gets started. Before his kid gets up, before his wife gets up, he wakes up and just churns out artwork. And you have to. It's kind of like if you're a writer, you need to wake up and write 10 pages before you even have your breakfast. It's just like doing your push-ups. You got to get it done.
Yeah. So everybody has their different process. So I love drawing and I love creating magic and all that jazz, but the film medium it was more like I can do so much in like live action for me.
Were you already acting at this point? Were you already acting at this point?
I started acting at 11, actually. It was part of my personal development because I was really shy. My mother put me into acting classes, so that actually really helped. So yeah, I was acting.
So the shy little girl, fast forward 10 years and you're meeting Russell Brand and all the shyness fell away.
Fast forward. It was more than 10. It's more 20 years. But I wasn't shy. I wasn't shy to jump on stage with Russell Brand. That's another story.
You told me at a Comic-Con how basically you were hugging his leg, and they were kind of like, "All right, like that's enough."
Well, Cool. No, I mean Russell Brand was. I saw a show.
Oh, you told me the story.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm often picked to go on stage, and even if I'm not picked, I just go on stage. So yeah, with Tony Clifton, he's like saw him perform, and he wanted 3 participants. I'm like me. He picked his 3, and then so should I not? He picked his 3, and then I just went up on board. Say it. I can hear you.
You want me to type my response, or do you want me?
Say it out loud.
Okay, very cool. My first that I saw was I Married a Strange Person, which is still one of my personal favorites. Just it's incredibly wild, it's incredibly outrageous, it's very sexual, and at the time, I was watching a lot of Disney films and Pixar films, but I, like any adult, enjoy seeing sex in cinema, and it's usually strangely absent from most American animations. So I Married a Strange Person was a total revelation. But I'm biased now that I work with him, so I'd have to say my personal favorite film of his is Cheatin', where I got to serve as an executive producer. And I would like to believe I would say that even if I hadn't worked on it, but at this point I've lost all objectivity. But yeah, so I have to kind of divide my criticism between the period when I wasn't working with them versus the period I've been working with them. I think his best short since I've been working with him is Footprints, which I did not work on. And I think that was an absolute masterpiece. And I think it shows that his style keeps evolving over time, which I think because he's so active, because he does so many shorts and does so many commercials and commissioned work in addition to his features, he gets a lot of practice. I feel like too many filmmakers are idle when they're trying to set up deals or trying to set up their next film. But, you know, a writer can write, a painter can paint. A filmmaker needs a lot of resources to create. I think it's absolutely essential to stay as busy as possible in between gigs. And I think that's one of the reasons why Bill keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, the practice, the doing, the action.
I mean, he has potentially 2 gigs coming up just on The Simpsons, these are only like 2 or 3 minute movies, but he's already done 3. But the opportunities to experiment are huge. And that way, when you get around to your features, you've kind of got a lot of the experiments and a lot of the mistakes out of your system, so you can really focus on what you're doing. And I feel like far too many young filmmakers are basically, they spend so much time working on their screenplay or so much time trying to find financing, they forget the most important thing is working on their craft. And yeah, if you don't have those essential skills, all the other work is kind of for naught.
And I think that's also to say that that inner work that sometimes takes you further than the action of sometimes tweeting or posting on Instagram or all that stuff, you know, because you can think bigger and think bigger, inspired actions.
Yeah, I mean, the Twitter stuff and everything's important, but it should never be the main goal. If you want to be a creator, I mean, I have no ambitions to be a director. I have no ambitions to be a creative writer. So I'm all in on Twitter, and I love sharing pictures of old films and behind the scenes. You can find me at Colbrax. I mean, I'm a fiend. And not to toot my own horn, but I've been ranked one of the top 100 most retweeted New Yorkers the last 3 months in a row. So yeah, I've got a very active presence on Twitter. But if I were a filmmaker, I would be neglecting my chief responsibility, making movies. But I just happen to be, I like to think of myself as a very vocal champion who helps filmmakers do what they do. And Twitter is definitely a very useful tool in that respect.
Yeah, I just feel like, that just has to be a balance. Because I love Twitter for that engagement part. But when you're writing, like, you have to get, like, some days I'll get in my I was just talking earlier today, like, I'll get in my 5 pages. And then a month will go by where my head is on. Like, I can't even think about, you know, because I'm not in that space. And sometimes you need way more rest and less stress rather than more stress. And when you're doing a crowdfunding campaign, the stress level goes
skyrockets. No, you live the campaign.
Right. So it's just not a time to really write. Where this summer I put a lot of time in and then got, you know, I'm up to 54 pages and like, you know, index cards of all full scenes. And that's like the longest script that I've ever written. And hopefully it's quality, not quantity. I hope to think so.
Ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage.
Well, that's not true because I always do improv. Improv is always a part of, but just birthing it. I mean, you're birthing a baby. You really are. And
a page is very intimidating.
Yeah, it is. It is because you're making this. It takes way more than you to make this baby. You know, it's a team effort, and even the gestation part in your head of like, okay, well the.
Oh, I lost audio, unfortunately. Can you still hear me? There you are. There you are. Gotcha.
Okay. I refreshed it. We're doing good.
Excellent.
The main thing is if you can hear me.
So you were talking about what you're going through when you're working on an original screenplay.
Yeah, and the gestation period of when you're even just thinking about it, and that's part of the birthing process.
Yeah, I wrote 2 screenplays, and it was just enough to realize that my enthusiasm for screenwriting vastly exceeded my talent for screenwriting. And those are 2 separate things. And I feel like enthusiasm is one thing, but it's not necessarily a surefire like path to storytelling brilliance. And I feel like I'm a much better judge of material by virtue of having written. But yeah, I was glad to kind of like eliminate that as a possibility early on, because the last thing you ever want to be thinking is like, I never actually sat down and write a script, blah, blah, blah. What if I had been really good at it? I kind of went all into my 20s and realized that I suck at it. And now I'm happy just to write about film as opposed to focusing on creating the films. Right.
Which is still an art.
Well, yeah, it has a role. It's just it's a different skill set from actual creative writing.
That's your magic, and that's your power. And because you found out early on, you got clear, and also in your passion.
Yeah, it's kind of like I got it out of my system. But I feel like for people who are compelled to write, they have no choice but to write. They wake up every day and they just have to have the discipline to put their hands to the keyboard. But someone like Stephen King, who's written dozens of novels, 1,000 pages in length, he has no choice but to write. It's going to come out of him one way or another. And I feel like it's important early on to recognize if you're that person, if you really have something to contribute or not. I lost the internet signal, but I've still got audio, so fire away.
Oh, you know what? I will.
But going back to the screenwriting thing, it's interesting working with Bill, whose process is very different. His screenplays are not traditional screenplays. They're more like storyboards on steroids. And it's kind of like, it's weird to see not weird, but it's interesting to see where the artwork ends and the writing begins, because he kind of does both at once. And sometimes he'll just do pages of thumbnails, and he kind of knows what the scene's going to be, but he doesn't necessarily want to write a lot of dialogue. And Cheatin' has almost no dialogue of any kind, apart from like people screaming in rage or pain or grief. But there's a lot of emotion, but it's basically verbally inarticulate, which is great because it actually plays equally well in front of any audience. I introduced the film in Hong Kong at a festival, and they had no problem following the story whatsoever. And Bill took it to Argentina a few weeks ago, and they had an absolute blast. So I kind of like the idea that it's not a silent movie, but it has that universal language that silent films enjoyed.
I think he figured out, especially with Idiots and Angels, that, you know, that's the way you can reach more people throughout the world with that universal format.
Well, I think also he just recognized that writing dialogue is not his forte. I think like if he's going to do dialogue, it helps if he works with a good writer or a great actor who can kind of flesh things out. When he was working with Patton Oswalt on The Lonely Stoplight, Patton had a lot of dialogue suggestions that Bill thought were a dramatic improvement upon what he'd already written. So I think he just recognized he tells his stories pictorially as opposed to verbally.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up this segment, and then we're gonna start the off the air segment. So okay. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. It's the best place, which is @Colebrax, COLEBRAX, and I'm there all day, every day, so very easy to find. Or you can find my podcast @WrongReel, and the website is wrongreel.com, and it's episodes about film, and we interview filmmakers, we review films. We also have a lot of film history essays and film reviews and that sort of thing. So yeah, between my animation and Wrong Reel, that's how I spend the majority of my time. But yeah, I'm always happy to get down and dirty about movies on Twitter, so don't be shy.
Okay, awesome. Anesthesio.com. You can check out my next film, The Fantastic Santa Monica, on Rocket Hub. It's a part of a big contest right now. It was picked by Ovation TV and Rocket Hub. So that's pretty amazing and cool and awesome validation. So I will, and the links will be below on YouTube in the replay and all that jazz.